It's in fact, the Access to Medicine Index is the publication of a list, 2 yearly, of how the big pharma companies address the issue in general of access to medicine in developing countries. What is the problem? The problem is that 2 billion people don't have access to medicine today, and according to the World Health Organization, it's between 1.2 and 2.1 billion people. And there was some time we looked at this issue as you know, the industry failed to address 2 billion people. And in a way that's true, but in fact we all failed, because it's also very true that all the pharmaceutical companies managed to address 5 billion people with their research and development and with their systems, and we addressed this issue for already 5 billion people. So you can also look at this issue as positively, is we did a good job so far, the industry did a good job, but what about the rest? So 5 billion people have access to medicine, 2 billion to go. What is exactly the problem? What is the role of big pharma, and who decides about their role? And is it themselves? Is it the financial markets? Well, you see today in the Pfizer issue that the financials play a very big role. But do we have a say in this? I'm convinced that we can say more than we think, because the industry is really listening, but sometimes they just don't know how. If you look at the opinion about access to medicine and you talk about all the stakeholders, then, for example, Oxfam has a different opinion about patents, about pricing issues, than, for example, than even Médecins Sans Frontières, and those opinions differ with the opinions what to expect in these issues of the big pharmaceutical companies from, for example, the World Health Organization. If we don't, and then if I go a step further, also local governments play a role. They have their opinion as well, could again be different. And if you then ask investors, they have different pictures as well. And are investors willing to listen? And I'm convinced there's a growing group, and I will show you, a growing group of investors also listening to what the world wants from these big pharma companies. And do the pharma companies know themselves what their role should be in addressing the issue of access to medicine? Well, if we don't, the basis of the Access to Medicine Index is, if we don't agree, then what to expect from these pharmaceutical companies? If we cannot find a consensus in issues like donations, in issues like pricing, in how they lobby their projects there in development, we should have an opinion, and we can define it. So our task was, first, define their role on all these issues. Second, measure. Does that make sense, measuring pharmaceutical companies? I think so, yes, because some companies have much better practices and policies than others. And is that interesting to know? Well, I always say pharmaceutical companies, they listen to NGOs, they listen to governments, but they mostly are interested in each other. And that was the reason, this competitive nature, to make a list and to find out with the experts what we want from them, and then later measure. So this is the background of our measurement. It took us years to organize this model, and every 2 years this model is fine-tuned. And we reach out to various experts of this world. Of course, the World Health Organization is very well involved, but also NGOs, governments, and when we know what we want from them, pharmaceutical companies as a group, not individually, but the IFPMA, International Federation of Organizations, they play their role as well, and they fine-tune. You will see that if we made our model with all stakeholders without the industry, then ask the industry, then some companies wanted more a bit to the right, and other companies wanted a bit to the left, and at the end, the model stays the same. So you see that the world estimates that pricing is the biggest barrier for access. So if companies are able to price their product, for example, in India, where you have a rich population and a poor population, is it possible to price your products different for the poor population and for the rich? Well, some companies say, impossible. Other companies say well, we found ways, there are possibilities, is by packaging or coloring your product. And if they show what they are doing, it is relevant for other companies so that they can learn. By only bashing the pharmaceutical companies, as we experience a bit, then we think they don't show what they do well anymore. And I think it's very important that they also show what they do well, not only for us, but also for their peers. Okay. I saw two companies this morning present. I saw Johnson & Johnson, second on our list, and I saw Sanofi, third on the list. They showed some practices, and those practices and policies are the things we measure. GSK, well, I brought this paper. Yesterday I spoke to Andrew Jack. I was in his home, can you imagine, here in London. Today he has the first article in the Financial Times. China hits at GSK's systemic bribery. Is that a barrier for access? I don't know, but still GSK we measure as number one. It's a difficult one for us, you know, today. But realize GSK has a lot to offer, and we say show what you do and show what you do well, and I'm convinced that other companies learn from that. Okay, the question now is, does this model, does it work? Does it make sense? Well, you will see that this is, we are going to, in 2014, in November, the fourth index will be published. And I tell you, more and more these companies show what they do. We measure them in 106 countries. It's a hell of a job, and sometimes we think, well, the burden for these companies is too high. They have to reach out to more than 100 people in a company to find all the data that we want from them. They share with us their pipelines also of neglected diseases. In fact, we know what the World Health Organization don't know, but we cannot say it to you because they give it under non-disclosure. We have to sign documents to them that we don't tell it further, but we know it and we can analyze that so that we compare them with each other, which company is further than the other. And that's relevant because they look at each other. Ed, shall I show the film?
Yeah.
I just want to show you whether it's relevant or not. And I'm, of course, very proud that the world picks it up, the index, that not only the companies, but...
Good morning to all of you, distinguished experts, ladies and gentlemen. The whole morning I'm emphasizing on balance, and getting, public health solutions to serve human welfare. The point that has been so eloquently, again and again, made by Pascal. Let me once again finish on one very optimistic note. Last year, the Access to Medicines Index, which issued report cards on the performance of pharmaceutical companies, was upbeat. And this is good. Access to medicine is improving. More companies are producing more products for developing countries. And we can all welcome this trend.
Good evening, and welcome to Q&A in the Sir John Clancy Auditorium at the University of New South Wales. I'm Tony Jones, answering your questions tonight. The co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Bill Gates. Please welcome our guest.
And so you need to have a system where somebody's paying enough to fund the research, and the poorest in the world are getting it at just a break-even cost. And in fact, we do a yearly ranking of the pharmaceutical companies called the Access to Medicine Index that calls out the different programs of them. And in general, they've been moving up. The ones that are lower call us up, talk about how they can do better. So I'd say that's an industry that's very well behaved.
Well, I'm very happy with this one because Bill Gates is our most important ambassador. It's not only here, but where he is, he talks about the index because he recognizes the fact that companies really try to become better in this issue, and it's exactly because we first defined it, what we want from it. These are the investors. It's very important that investors back our efforts. You know, when we want something, but the investors want the other way, then it's lost energy. It's only interesting if what we do makes sense for their business. So if they see those 2 billion as a future market, and a growing group of companies, but also investors see that. So they see access to medicine as a business for their future. And these investors, they represent 4.4 trillion US dollar. It is growing, this list. You see that also investors, the big institutional investors, are willing to play their role. And what they do, they talk to these pharmaceutical leaders and they say, okay, how far are you on the index? We watch you. And I think you can do much better here or there. Every 2 years we are rated as well. You see, there is raters here in London. They rate all the ratings, and they, yeah, it's amazing. But it's that's of course we are judged, and we are very happy with that, because here you see the 20 biggest sustainability indexes in the world. Yes, we were already happy that we were in that list, in this list of 20 sustainability index, because we are rather young. Yes. Oh, here you see that after the Dow Jones of Sustainability, they see the Access to Medicine Index as very credible in this world. And we even passed recently the FTSE4Good Index, which is much more known. And also, the other indices rate all various companies, and we only rate one sector. And that's why you see that this model is now trying to be copied to other sectors as well. We can do something now to guide these companies towards better practices. You want to say something about it, yes?
10 seconds and then we have to break, because
Okay.
I realize it has been a long morning. Good morning, my name is Ed Munchin. I will chair the panel discussion after the break. But we just want to show you how the industry is progressing, and these are 6 or 7 typical indicators. So you see their rankings on the governance go higher. I think R&D partnerships is probably the most interesting for this audience. You see that going up. So all the efforts you are doing, and it's maybe the message I like to close with, all the partnerships you are taking with these 20 big pharma companies will be ranked in the Access to Medicine Index, and they will get credit for it. See you after the break.